Hello and welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for joining me in another of my wonderful interviews. Today I'm in the studio with a guest. Oh, it's great when people make the effort to come all the way down to my little studio and it's not on Zoom. Today I'm talking to an author. He's also a truther, a freedom man, and he has written a number of books, including this, which he sent to me and said, Richard, you'll enjoy this because it's kind of a cutthroat, rather grim and fascinating book, which I admit I did get halfway through and then I got distracted like so many things. My guest today is Mark Playne. He joins me now. He runs Not on the Beeb, which a lot of people may have subscribed to or know about, and if they don't, they jolly well should. Hello, Mark. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Richard. Thanks very much for having me.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for coming in. Now, I always cock up my intros because I never really know what I'm going to say, like most of my videos. But you are an author, and we want to get onto that because I'm actually trying to have a go at writing a book. I've got about 3 words written, so that's good. You know, hello and the end. And we'll talk about that. But before all that, you are known also in the truth, freedom, this weird space I never quite know what to call. Yeah. And I think the audience often don't know what to call either. But you've been doing this for a long time, well before that funny virus thing that went round and we all ended up sitting in our houses, twiddling our thumbs, wondering what was wrong with the world.
Yeah, I had a fast kind of dive down the rabbit hole, as they say, when I got the news that we all dread, with my mother calling me to say, you know, she'd been given that diagnosis, and things were moving very, very fast with her cancer. And I was researching, literally waking up as the old cliche, my forehead on the keyboard.
Oh, really?
Yeah, literally. But, you know, I was learning. And when I look back on it now, I was, you know, so far away from where I needed to be. But, you know, I was on a fast track and getting deeper and deeper. But we very quickly, within 6 weeks, probably a diagnosis, ended up in Mexico in the cancer clinics on the other side of the American border. So basically, it's a very, very interesting space and where doctors from Mexico and around the world go to work on the border, and all the Americans who've been thrown out of their system or given the stage 4, which is basically like a death sentence, drop down, literally drive for the border, come over and enter these clinics with these cancer specialists who take them in, and with very, very effective treatments. And yes, my mother did die there. We got there too late. My mother's cancer was very, very fast moving due to something happened when she was a child, and something called SV40 probably. But you know, after she died, I carried on researching, and once you go down the rabbit hole, you can't unlearn
Right.
what you've learned. You can't unsee what you've seen. You can't backtrack. And of course, when you're on the information superhighway, you're always looking for that next bit, the next, you know, connecting the dots. So it drives you forward. So by the time 2020 came around, I was well versed.
So you knew something was up.
Yeah.
Fairly quickly.
Yeah, and I could see it coming.
Right.
So this was the thing, you know, we could see 2 years before, and I think there's quite a few of us like it. We could sense something was happening. It was that kind of feeling when you could feel you're being surrounded and squeezed in.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah. So when you saw those videos coming in from China of people sort of suddenly collapsing, because I know you do filmmaking as well. That for me was the thing. I was thinking, hang on, these are incredibly fishy. This sort of like send an army of people out with little phones and get people to just drop down dead, and then say it's some sort of virus.
Yeah, I never trust any videos like that, but I thought they could be real. I thought they couldn't. For me, it was the maths that got me.
Okay.
So it's when I plumbed a few numbers in and realised with this massive, great big kind of pandemic that it was more dangerous to get on a motorbike or in a car in China than catch a virus. So when
Yes.
It would just literally put it all in proportion, some simple kind of stabbing on a calculator.
Well, I do remember. It's funny you should say that, because I remember somebody somewhere posted something, or more. There's more people dying from putting trousers on and falling down the stairs. It was, you know, that kind of statistic.
Yeah, but that brings it home, and it brings it into realisation when you're, you know, because all numbers and pictures of dying people, you know, you only have to show a hospital bed, and it traumatises people.
Yeah.
Or blood or anything,
yeah.
and it traumatises. But when it comes down to, we all get down the stairs every day, and the stairs are a dangerous thing in the house. We all kind of know it. But when you put it into proportion, and realise that getting down or putting on your trousers,
and tripping over,
is more dangerous than the virus, then you just have to.
And of course, I mean,
the realization at
that knowledge never comes out, of how many people die from very simple accidents in the home.
No,
because it's it's like who cares how many people put on their trousers, fall over and bash their head or whatever, or tumble down the stairs, but it's because it's not that dramatic compared to
news grabbing,
scary,
big disaster. I mean, this is the way to talk about the book. In the book, 3 Seconds in Bogota is a story from when I was travelling around South America. He's just going back. But in the story, I mentioned when I was in South America, which is kind of the scary place with all these crazy diseases and everything else. When I was there was a pandemic that was in my hometown in England, in Stroud, where I grew up at the time, of a flesh-eating bacteria. And this went all around the world, and everybody in South America going, "You're from that town? God, everyone must be dead. They're all dying from this flesh-eating bacteria. They're all turning into zombies." And I was like calling up my mum and going, "How is it? Oh God, Dr. So-and-so's got it. And Auntie Jane's all right." And this, it was like, but it was all in proportion. And it was time to go home, and the summer was starting, all the flowers were coming up, and it was time to leave that luxurious South American summer in the winter and go back to some festival season in Britain. And everyone was like, "You can't go back, it's too dangerous, you've got to stay here in South America." And it's like, no, that's my hometown. And of course we turned up, and a few people had died, a few people were injured, and very sadly, but life was going on as normal.
Yes.
But with the news of it in South America, they were terrified. They were like, "You're crazy, you're going to go and die." So that was also like a training thing as well.
But you nearly did die on the way back in a taxi.
Yes.
Which is in the book. But we'll come back to all of that. It's rather grisly. Somebody's holding a knife to your throat, as I remember.
Yes.
But anyway, we'll come back to that in a minute, because we will talk a little bit about the crisis, the tyrants, the tyranny, I think the term is, of where we are. And you do a lot of thinking, because you're a writer, and you think, and you run Not on the Beeb. Just tell us a little bit about Not on the Beeb, what that is for people who don't know, and what you're trying to achieve with it.
Well, Not on the Beeb is an alternative media channel, and it's literally as the name is on the tin. So it all started when I pulled out my camera at the first major protest in London, 29th of August 2020. The BBC were not there, and I pulled out my mobile phone, put it on live on Facebook, and by about a week later, because they picked up the feed in America, Del Bigtree with the show The High Wire took my feed off Facebook, pushed it out on their channels. We had 1.4 million views.
Wow.
And and it was on my phone, and it's more views than ever. My other films that have kind of gone to film festivals. I won some awards, but there's 100 people in the cinema or 300 people in the festival. You bring out your mobile phone, and it was just like,
I had the same with the YouTube channel. I'd spend ages making a video, and you put it up, and 100 people watch. I'd sit in the chair downstairs and say, "Is Neil Oliver right about not paying your bill?" and everybody was watching.
The barometer goes up to the end. It's the red zone. Exactly. I'm not sure. So they needed a name, and I'd used it before, and all kind of I was just a keyboard activist with using social media, and I used to say, "As not seen on the BBC, you won't see this on the BBC." So when they needed a brand to go on, because suddenly they were asking for logos and everything else, it was like Not on the Beeb, and just basically carried on. I stepped in to filming the protests, and showing, basically to encourage everyone else in the country, because at that time under lockdown,
yes.
You were told everyone was cowering at home, but not realising there was kind of all these tens of thousands of very happy, jolly people, all with their arms around each other, giving each other kind of hugs and kisses, when you're not meant to be standing 6 foot away, completely fearless. These amazing kind of freedom people.
And that's the thing. If they had broadcast that, it would have relaxed people a hell of a lot.
Of course it would have.
Well, yes, I know.
Of course, that's the thing. That's why they did. That's why they didn't show it, and that's why they couldn't go. So the great irony on that day.
I did get there.
On the 29th, no, I know, but on the 29th of August, the BBC reported on the event in Berlin had 1 million people protesting, but they didn't protest on the protest that filled Trafalgar Square. So they weren't going to say anything about what was happening in our country. And they'd had, that was it. It was the Yellow Vest protests in France.
Oh, yes,
the BBC I'd been fighting that kind of. So that was maybe my warm up about a year and a half before, whenever it was, because the BBC never showed anything until people started losing eyes, and then on social media, all that images got around, and the BBC kind of went, oh yeah, and just pretended they'd. About week 11 or something, they stepped in and pretended they'd been kind of reporting the whole time. So I was kind of hoping to trigger something like that.
Right.
But of course, yeah, we know where we are now.
And of course, there's many things that we could say here, but we know, and my audience, of course, knows that YouTube has its own little games to play, and presumably is having strings pulled by it, which is why, just to remind people, I am demonetized, and if you wish to donate, all that kind of stuff, links are in the description. But there's certain things that we would like to have spoken about, but obviously we just can't. But we can talk about solutions and what we do about the oppression that we find ourselves in this day and age.
Yeah, and one is communicating. That's probably the first one, is because we're talking now and we're putting information out, and when people see that, they can hear there's something going on. So people now might be watching this and going, so what's this not on the Beeb? And they can find the website and they can go and see the information that is being heavily censored.
Whilst we just go on that one point, because a lot of people watch on their smart TVs now, and as a result of that, they don't see the description. So I'm told. I don't have a smart TV. Don't have TVs.
Yeah.
Well, I have a monitor here, but that's about it. So I often now ask, could you verbally tell me what the URL is, so that those people who can't be bothered to get a laptop out, we've all become so lazy, haven't we? So we'll make it nice and easy. What is the URL for Not on the Beeb?
It's notonthebeeb.co.uk. So Beeb is, for those who are not used to the word, is the nickname for the BBC, and it's spelled B-E-E-B. So it's Auntie Beeb, that's the old name. So Not on the Beeb is like saying not on the BBC.
There you go. So we've cleared that one up. Just that people always say, can you tell me the URL?
It's a good point.
Because
really
people are watching on big tellies and they don't see the description. Anyway, so yes, communication.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes if we look at what they've tried to stop us doing, it tells us what we should do.
Right.
So one of the big things, we can talk about this later with dates, is one thing of what they were doing, some very strange things with dates on bans and everything else, but they tried to stop us communicating. So the first rule of lockdown was keeping everyone separate, because the most dangerous thing is people talking.
Yes.
And it's known that kind of family members are the people you trust the most, and it's kind of friends, and it's a long way down to get to government. So they're trying to silence you from your friends and family. And of course, the great British tradition of the pub, where people went down and talked and discussed.
Yes.
Is what they were scared of. So that's one of the reasons we were banned out of pubs, was to stop us talking. The 6 feet principle and everything else, not gathering in more than 3. That's the classic censorship for kind of any revolutionary. And the point is, no any more people, 3 people gathering is a conspiracy. You're going to bring down the government, but they're kind of right, because when people gather and talk, that's what can happen. That's how they can lose the power. So talking, communication, and just spreading knowledge is, I think, the most powerful thing. So that's what why I dedicated myself to Not on the Beeb, is just to keep putting the information there, but it's for you and the people listening who are more aware of what we're talking about, to then look at those resources, and then you can filter them and decide what is suitable for your auntie, your uncle, or children, whatever, and pick and pieces. But it's just providing that information.
Yeah, and we can know that that's right, because you see the censorship. And there wouldn't be the censorship if they weren't worried that the communication is actively working.
And one thing I'm very proud of is, in all the fact checkers we've had against what we're doing, is they've never mentioned the name Not on the Beeb.
Oh, right.
Because the name's on the tin, which is designed. Because, of course, if they went Not on the Beeb is a conspiracy channel and whatever, people can look at it and go, it will invite people's curiosity to see what's there.
Yeah.
So they've never mentioned it. So when we did the kind of work, when we discovered that, very strangely, that magnets were sticking to people for a certain reason, we had quite a kickback. It's quite extraordinary to see the kickback. Reuters came out, all the major fact checkers came out, comedians came out in America, all trying to stop people experimenting by picking up magnets, because it's the one thing they hadn't thought about because it was the curiosity
Yes.
of human beings led them, because there was some crazy conspiracy theories that people might be chipped, and of course if it was a chip underneath the skin for any reason, then maybe it was something metallic, and people started experimenting with magnets, and then lo and behold, some people hadn't been chipped, not with a silicon chip at all, but people were experimenting and magnets were sticking. So
It would. I mean, it would be very bizarre, would it not, if people were to pick up magnets, little magnets, and it stuck on a human body. I mean, I don't know whether anybody's actually managed to do that in recent times. Perhaps since 2020. I'm just thinking that would be quite strange if you could do that. Send us some pictures if that's happened to you.
Well, of course, it's the thing that, as a child, I think we can all remember as a child when we first found magnets and play with them. You just sit there, cross-eyed, working out why they stick, and then you go up to bits of metal, and then you discover that aluminium doesn't stick, and it's like, but it's metal. Why doesn't it stick to this or to glass? And we're all so fascinated by it. So we all know what magnets did because we played with them so much as a kid. So when magnets do something strange, of course, it creates quite a reaction. But going back to kind of the kickback we got was the BBC and the NHS in 2020. I think it was the summer in June, did a joint announcement to ban neodymium magnets.
Really?
Yes, because the reason they used was because 3 years ago, a child had swallowed 2 neodymium magnets. It got stuck either side of the intestine, and they had to have an operation to remove them. But they didn't mention us, and we were putting out all the information, but they just tried to ban neodymium magnets. And as I always say to people, it'd taken me a week to learn how to pronounce neodymium magnet. And I was like, so hang on, it's taken me a week to learn it. I've put out all this news, and now the BBC and the NHS are doing a joint thing to try and get them banned. And I was like, that's a coincidence.
Well, there you go. Isn't that that is very strange? And I, it's not the sort of thing that gets people aren't swallowing magnets, very frequently. I wouldn't have thought.
Well, you'd hope
it's
not.
just you'd hope not.
No.
And if you've got any sort of problems inside, if you've got metalwork inside you, I suppose normally in an operation they wouldn't put anything that was magnetic.
I think they use, it's titanium. I think they still use for implants, and that's, as far as I know, that's not magnetic. As far as I know.
Yeah. No. So it would be rare that kids would swallow it, but it's that rarity was enough to ban them.
From 3 years ago, so they had a delay from banning of 3 years since the incident, but it happened just to be a week after we were suggesting everyone bought these
no
time of rare metal
at all
magnet to do some experiments with.
So anyway, that's that is fascinating. You've got a little list there. I'm just looking down. You've got a little list of pointers that are interesting. Money you mentioned in your list there.
I think we've just had this amazing petition. It's one of the fastest petitions I've seen signed, which was trying to call for a general election.
Yeah, I knew about it, but I can't. It's what, over 3 million now?
Yeah, and it was amazing. It was moving at 27 signatures a second, so it's the fastest ever seen move. It's not the biggest, because I think the Brexit one was 6 million, but it's the fastest moving. And of course, everyone was like, "Well, what's the point? Signing another petition?" But what it did do was show everybody who was signing it, 3 million people, 27 people a second wanted a general election because they're really unhappy with the current government. But people, coming back to the money bit, people talk about the effect in democracy and does it work and everything else. And it doesn't, because we're being cheated like crazy. So in the previous elections, going back to 2017 in Britain, I'm convinced our elections have been swung massively using postal votes. And I was so sure of this that when it came up to the previous Trump one, in 19, I said, they're going to have you on this. It's going to be via the postal votes. That was the chink in the armour I could see, because basically you're not going in and voting old style, put across, show your ID, put across on a bit of paper. It's like it goes off somewhere, and of course it's open. It's so open to
abuse,
fiddling, and of course, then many of you will have seen the film 2000 Mules that came out after that election, which was showing how they fiddled that previous Trump election. But so with elections and democracy, you can't trust it, because the people who hold the power are the people who count the votes, not the people voting. So we don't have the power because they cheat. They cheat like crazy. I mean, I think one of the biggest illusions we have in Britain is we have a robust democracy, and it's the news they put on the BBC, they say, well, we send off to Kenya or we send off to African countries, democracy team to check the voting because we do it properly and we're going to show them how to do it properly. Yeah, right. It's very convincing to the British public. But the power we do have to vote is not with an X on a bit of paper. It's with the pound in our pocket. And the system, the culture we live in here, more than being a democracy, is a financial system. We live in a capitalist society where money counts. And the one vote that always counts is where you spend your pound. And they're terrified of that because we can not buy certain products. We can buy other products, and it's the most powerful thing you could do. And as British people, the big letters I've got here, we're conflict adverse. I think that's one of the defining parts of the British population. It's famously in France, when people protest, it's because they want change. In Britain, we only protest when we don't want change. That's kind of the history. We protest against change. But we're very quiet, and when we saw, as a people, we're very quiet. If the British people, someone's in a restaurant and they're British, and they get a bad meal, they'll go, the waiter will come out. How was it? Oh no, it's fine. It was wonderful. And then I'm going to leave a review on Google after. I'm going to go on Google, leave a review. That's the British people. I'll tell my friends never come back here again.
Yes.
But in Italy and France, they'll go, hey, bring it back, and I'll make the meal get recooked. But as British people, we're quiet, we're conflict adverse. So. And I understand that because that's in our culture. But we can be very powerful voters if we take our pound and use it to deny certain people money, but to fund other people. Yes. And that's the power.
Well, I mean, the Arla thing that's in recent with this Bovir or whatever, people are saying, well, we're not going to them anymore. We're not buying their food. And, they're looking around for raw milk and fresh dairies, which is exactly what we want. And
it's brilliant. It's amazing.
Educating people at the same time that they often put things in food that isn't actually any use to us or is harmful to us.
Or is dangerous because we've seen the infertility risks associated with it. And it's absolutely fantastic. But that protest is also something people can do when they're conflict averse, because we need to kind of awaken more people. So if you take some Arla milk and put it all into a shopping trolley and then push it halfway down the aisle and just leave it, or maybe put the bottles amongst the vodka and put them into the spirit section, basically hinting to people that this should be over 18s only or something, or leave a little note stuck on it.
Well, do what they do on tobacco, this is dangerous, and just stick it on.
So go and put some stickers on there and move them. And you're not, and all you're going to be doing is AI or automatic tills can't put the milk back. They've got to employ human beings to go and put that milk back on the shelf. That's a very good point. So you're actually doing a good thing by protesting, but it's a very, just to pick up one pint if you don't want to be conflict and just sneak it, put it in with the vodka, or just leave some in a trolley, and then it's warning other people, because other people are going to walk around and go, what's wrong with this? And even the words, if you put a sticky note on it, research Arla, and people find out what it is, then people will realise. And that's how... Okay, that's an active form of protesting, but it's still kind of conflict.
And that's where the communication comes in, to share the idea, so that an army of people do that.
Yes.
And people have been doing that with the automated tills, where they've just deliberately not gone to the automated tills, and they've lined up to speak to that one poor little old lady who wants to go on a tea break. She's been sitting there with nobody, and then suddenly 50 people. And it's, well, you could go on there. No, we want to talk to a human.
But it's fantastically effective. It really is, because supermarkets...
Because they are thinking about returning to having them less automated. I don't know whether that's a long-term plan or it's just to sort of ease people a bit, because
we have to think about what they're doing to us. So when you go in the supermarkets, because they're part of what we're fighting, and the supermarkets are front line. When you go in, they're reducing the amount of tills that accept cash, right? Because they're trying to inconvenience you. So if you're waiting for the cash till and everyone's trying to use it, they're inconveniencing us to try and make you get, you've got to pick up the kids from school, so you pull out the card and go and pay. So us inconveniencing them is just a bit of their own medicine. So leaving the trolleys full of things there, it's just giving them a bit back on what they're doing to us. It's just...
and people have emailed in and said that they've been doing that with the supermarkets and just not going. I mean, that's the other thing.
Well, yeah, the second part to money is using cash is so important, because when we lose cash, they gain total power over us, as been seen in China. So I've been to film festivals in China and watched it, and seen how people move around, and they can put people under house arrest in China by just switching off. They have a app called WeChat, which is like our WhatsApp, but your payment system is via the chats. Everyone has it, but they can pull your money off it, which means that people become you can't buy a train ticket, you can't buy a plane ticket, you can't move. So you can put you under house arrest just by pulling your system. And if you haven't got cash to pull out and go and buy a ticket with cash, you are stuck. So using cash, I think, is probably the most important thing right now that everyone could do. And everyone, if every week, just on a Monday, went and took out cash like in the old days, and then spent as much cash as possible. One, you're rewarding the establishments that accept cash. Hold up is what I've done. I've gone and ordered a coffee before and gone in the wrong coffee shop, and they've kind of said, no, it's card only. And you go, hold a £5 and go, really? And walk out. And their faces, they just look so aghast that you're walking away with the money, but it really makes the point. But if we take out that cash and then also avoid the supermarkets, because this is where the problems are happening, it's via the supermarkets, and go to our local farmers market and spend cash. We're empowering, we're voting with our money, like I was saying before, and we're supporting the local farmers who are giving us organic raw milk, which is beyond important. Because do you know about the cysteine the importance of cysteine that's in raw milk?
Now, this is where I ought to know this, because I have been milking cows, dairy cows, for raw milk. And John Cook, whose dairy we go down and help at, and we will be doing that at Christmas as well. I don't know that we've been reading about dairy herds, so I don't know this. I might know this. That's the trouble with me, is I'll read something and you go, oh yeah, and then somebody will say something and you go, oh, I do know what you're talking about.
So right now, we need to detoxify.
Yeah.
And I think we all understand that. Anybody who doesn't, not on the beeb.co.uk to find out why we need to detoxify. And the most important way of detoxifying is our own innate inbuilt system. And there's a substance we make called glutathione. 3 amino acids are needed to make glutathione: glutamate, cysteine, glycine. They're all glutamate, glycine is freely available in all food, but cysteine is highly responsive to heat and gets destroyed. And it can't make the glutathione, but with enough glutathione we can detoxify. Glutathione actually recycles vitamin C inside us, so it's really, really, really important. But if your milk is pasteurized, it's destroyed. So cheese, milk, all the sources have been heated, have been destroyed. So getting hold of raw milk enables us to get hold of the cysteine, and then we can have glutathione. That's probably one of the biggest health advice I can give anybody.
Well, that's another good reason. There's raw milk in your tea, by the way.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. Although, of course, it heated up a bit. But it wasn't boiling water straight on it.
No. So, yeah, well, it does actually get destroyed in tea as well, thing.
But that's what I only buy raw milk.
Yeah, which is fantastic. And it's a huge thing. And the other thing, and you can also gain, this is the reverse engineering. You can see where they're attacking us. Because what's the other product they are moving on? It's chickens and it's eggs. So eggs is a high form of cysteine inside eggs. So that's the second food after raw milk, or with raw milk. So if you boil your egg, you're going to destroy the cysteine inside it.
Oh,
but of course,
I like boiled eggs.
But naturally, a lot of us have runny eggs, so we don't think about it, but we're getting raw egg in there, so it hasn't been cooked, and that's how we're getting the cysteine.
Oh, right.
But I totally believe this massive push we're seeing on clamping down on poultry is connected to eggs. We've seen how eggs were disappearing over the supermarket shelves.
Yeah,
that's an attack on it. And when you've done enough research in it, I'm absolutely convinced that in 1971, when they brought in those pasteurisation laws, it was an attack on our health.
Yeah, blimey. Okay, so it's back down to runny eggs, not boiled. I love hard-boiled eggs. I've just ruined my health. Just
Well, have the
ruined it.
hard-boiled eggs, but have
Hard-boiled eggs match my head, you see.
yeah, I know that one. Yeah, snap on this one. But we should be going back to kind of what our grandfathers did.
I totally agree.
And having a raw egg in the morning. I do
A raw egg?
A raw egg in the morning, but quality source is another reason to go to your farmer's market.
Yes.
Because you do not want one of the eggs with the lion stamp on it.
Right.
Because there's a history behind what's happened to that egg that people can look into. You want an egg that's come from a chicken on a small local farm. So good sauce. Crack it, bit of Worcester sauce in, mix it all around, and it's a lovely start to the day. But that's what our grandfathers did, and they were in superb health, and it's what we need to do now. And everyone I've shown this to has seen dramatic health changes. So there's a great doctor friend of mine who now, sorry, I kicked the mic. A great doctor friend of mine who's a vegan and was suffering health issues, and she now very bravely calls herself a raw egg, raw steak eating vegan. Okay, you've got to marry her.
Yes,
You've got to marry her.
Yeah,
and she's seen what it's done to her health. So she now sees the raw egg and the raw steak she does once a week as a medicine, but not part of her conscience of not, being a vegan, because she did it for ethical reasons.
Yes.
So she's still a vegan by heart, but she has to have
for health.
And it's made a dramatic difference to her.
Well, that's really great, because we are being pushed the vegan diet left, right, and centre, and plant food, and of course we've seen how cows have been targeted, and this milk nonsense is another element of that.
But I truly believe it's all connected, because the cysteine is so important, and we've got some key amino acids in dairy, in eggs, that we need.
Gosh, well, there you go. So make sure you get your raw milk and your raw egg. It's back to a raw diet then.
Paid with cash.
Paid with cash.
With raw cash.
Yes,
raw cash.
Raw cash, yes. Don't cook your notes is the best advice we've got. Listen, let's talk about you're a communicator, clearly, and you've been doing that, and you do that online with Not on the Beeb, but also we mentioned at the beginning that you are a novelist, a writer, and a filmmaker, so you do a lot of... See, I'm a crap editor here. I'm doing this on the fly, and I just held this up, but cut to your camera. I know what I'm doing. I'm just deliberately doing it badly. But you are a writer as well, and you have written books. Now, are your books about the truth and freedom movement? Are you writing books that telling people, get your raw egg, eat your raw milk, drink your raw milk even?
No, I'm not. No, not at all.
And is there a reason for that?
When I went to film school, I was very aware that facts don't work, and the real way is story.
Yeah.
That's how you can get information. That's how you can change minds. So it's very ironical that I'm now working with Not on the Beeb, fact-based, because I've always known that doesn't kind of really work. And yet I've worked very hard at it, and then going really crazy to realise that you can show people facts, but if they've been hypnotised, and hypnosis is more powerful than facts. And it's a horrible thing to kind of realise. And of course then I realised that stories are the way to go, but I haven't given it the time. But it's literally, I'm at a turning point of just thinking that's kind of what I need to do in the future.
And mainstream media, that's what they use all the time. You think of the news, you think of it as giving you facts, but actually it's an emotional story which affects you're going to die if you don't take a certain medical intervention. If you don't do this, and so although they do facts, a lot of the scaremongering that goes on is very narrative based, very emotionally based.
Yeah, and it's repetitive.
And drip
so
feed.
It's drip feed. It's 360. It's 24-hour, multiple sources. So, but it's a hypnosis.
But to get away from that, and everybody needs to get away from the tyranny and all of that, to escape into the world of writing must be amazing. I
love it. It's because it really is leaving the planet. Because when I leaving the planet, I normally it really is, because when I was writing films, I see the films in my head.
Right.
So it's like going to the cinema, and then I'm kind of watching it playing all in my head, and then I'm writing down what I'm imagining and what I'm seeing. So yeah, it's a great escape. And it's something I want to get. Well, I'm actually kind of I finally brought out the book, because I stopped the book that I've just published, when I started Not on the Beeb, I was right in the middle of releasing a 4-part serial when, on the 8th of August 2020, when I kind of realised, I remember just thinking, we're in real trouble now, we're in real trouble, and I'm not sure how we get out of this. It was like down all tools, and that's how I started. You know, I became a full-time activist. 3 weeks later was that big protest I mentioned when I picked up the camera.
Yes.
But I'd gone full-time 3 weeks before because I could see we were in trouble. And I've now, this year, just brought out the book, finished off the books I was writing. And it's a great honour and pleasure to come back to them. But I'm also seeing kind of what's in the books. So for instance, with the 3 seconds in Bogota, I'm more seeing kind of how it's kind of connected and how it's also served me to enable me to do Not on the Beeb. So you mentioned a knife and a taxi.
Yes.
And the incident happened without ruining the story. Very few people survive. So 100,000 people disappeared in those years in Colombia. It was right in the time of Escobar. So I was there between the two deaths of the Escobar. There was Escobar that everyone knows about, the drug dealer, who was shot by the police. And then 3 months later, there was Escobar, the footballer, who was shot on his international footballer, who in the World Cup scored an own goal, and they murdered him on his return. So I was there.
Good fans they were.
Yeah, well, I think it was a mafia betting syndicate who had lost a lot of money and decided.
Right.
I mean, we shouldn't laugh about a guy.
No, of
it's
course.
terrible.
No, it is terrible.
It's terrible.
Kicked a ball in the own goal. That's it.
And
that's
then
your
get
death
shot
warrant.
for it. Yeah, it's ridiculous. But I was there in the middle of it with my girlfriend and facing a situation which, you know, top CIA agents have died in, and exactly the same thing. You know, people, James Bournes of the world.
Yes.
And I was just a backpacker, a rucksack, and a girlfriend, and was put on the spot. But thinking, okay, so the ending of the story is known because I'm here. But
He claims he's here.
this is
It
my
may all
claim.
be
This is my claim.
AI.
But the thing is, I learned at that moment that the impossible is possible, because I escaped. And it was standing up to something that was like, it was an impossible situation, but by doing certain things and thinking in a certain way enabled my survival. So that's kind of what the story's about.
And you reveal at the end the things that you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know,
It's kind of got a big twist in it.
should you ever be in that situation, knife up against the throat and all that kind of business, it's worth knowing those things.
I don't recommend I don't recommend following the story, but what the story is kind of showing, and I'm giving a bit away now, but what it was, and this is part of my kind of my view on life, my religion, was when everyone knows that when you kind of die, the classic is you get a flashback of your whole life. So facing this moment, the reason it's called 3 seconds in Bogota is I had 3 seconds until we were dead. So I had 3 seconds to get out of the situation. And of course, I went through everything in my mind, and it was in slow motion, just kind of very leisurely going back through the files of all my memories for every little bit of information I could pull out that could help me survive. No, that won't work. Put it back. Go and see this. It'll come back. So the story is about me basically going through the files of my memory, picking out all the bits of information to try and find that one key that would save ourselves.
So was it? Hang on, I must because I have read half of the book. I did get.
You haven't read the key half.
I haven't read. No, that's the. I mean,
which is the second half.
It is embarrassing to have the author sitting here and who sent you the book ages ago, and then you didn't read. But then people do send me lots of.
You're very busy.
And then I get books that are like, oh, this guest is talking about, say, cancer or something, and it was like 300, 600 pages, and you go, oh, I've got to read this, and then this kept because this was just.
Of course.
Interest as opposed to workbook reading. Am I getting out of it? Probably not. But you know,
you are getting out, because I totally understand. You know, I run the channel, and people have looked at me and gone, "Well, we sent you that, and you didn't publish it, so therefore you don't believe in this, or maybe you're not with us." No, just completely overwhelmed. Yeah, trying to keep up. Every day is a fight to keep up with what we have to do. So
I just want to drag it back to those 3 seconds, because that does intrigue me, and I'm sure it will intrigue many other people. Is that literally what goes through your mind? There you are, 3 seconds from death, and it really goes into slow motion. That you are you consciously aware that it is in slow motion?
Yes.
Or is it sort of
retrospective? No, because the volume of information that goes through your head, it's a survival. It's built into us. It happened to everybody before. you're in a situation where you think you're going to die. You just literally, the body shuts down, you enter a different time zone, and you do go through every single thing in your head, and that's what I try and express in the book. The whole book is based on 3 seconds.
I've got the bits of leading up
yeah.
to it, because you set up the book right at the beginning.
So there's another book I'm going to write about. So for instance, there's another book I'm going to write to follow this one up, and I was in a car crash in America, high-speed car crash at 95 mile an hour, a head-on collision at 95, and they were probably doing the same speed. And I avoiding this car coming to me head-on, I spanned the car and ended up going backwards down the motorway, looking and then realising I was sliding, because in America, where they have a central reservation, they don't have big barriers, they just have a big patch of grass. So I was whizzing across this grass backwards into the oncoming lorries coming the other way.
Bloody hell.
So, and the thing was, right, so it happened again then, okay?
Yeah.
So I'm doing probably about 70 mile an hour backwards in an American car into lorries. And it just went into slow motion, and I went straight back to being a child in the fairground. Even when you're on the dodgems,
yeah.
And you remember the bit where you try and get your friends but go backwards, and it's really hard to steer backwards?
Yeah.
I went right back into slow motion, into the dodgem, and I was like, and I'm doing 70 mile an hour backwards into lorries, going, which way is it? If I go that way, I'm going to kink the car and go straight in front. But if I get it the right way, I can just pull it out of the path for the lorries and park on, slow down on the grass. But massively into slow motion. And it was right back to being 8 years old or 9 years old, whatever, and I got it right because I pulled that memory up of how to steer a Dodge in the right way.
And do you think you were working in conjunction with your subconscious that was helping you just automatically do that, or were you making those actual physical? I've got to go to the left rather than to the right.
Well, this is a brilliant question, because in this car crash, the one thing I can remember everything except for the most key important thing, because the car in front of me appeared to pull out, because I was speeding down the motorway. Something had happened causing me to speed, and because you're meant to be doing 55, I was doing 95, and
it's just a little bit over the odds.
And the car went to pull out what appeared to be to pull out from in between the lorries into the fast lane. And I had 1 second of memory going, there's something wrong with that car. And the next thing I know, I'm going backwards. Well, next thing I know, I'm seeing trees. That's the next bit of memory.
Right.
But I don't remember swerving. Because what it was not the back of a car, it was the front of a car. So this person had swerved to miss, they were going the wrong way up the motorway. And they'd swerved to miss a lorry and were then in my path. But I got no memory of going, oh, that's the front of a car, anything. So something took over and swerved. I see the trees. I then swerved back to avoid the trees, but swung the back of the car around and ended up going backwards. So that one key moment, I don't know where that came from. I've even had dreams. I've had multiple dreams over the last 30 years about that kind of moment of what caused, who steered it, what bit of me yanked the steering wheel to pull me out of the path of that car, because I don't know who did that. And I've got no memory of it. But
is there like a spiritual thing going on here? Do you think that somebody's protecting you in those few moments? Is going, right, don't panic.
We're going to do this. You're very good, Richard, because that is the ultimate. That's I mentioned my belief system, and that's what I talk about in the book.
Which I haven't got to yet.
Because you haven't got to the bits. But there's some things that happened, that enabled me to survive the situation, that you can't make up and make absolutely no logic. And the only way, when I look back at the story now, from 30 years later since it happened, is there was someone helping. Because what happened and enabled me to survive the situation was what went through my head, but I had some props, you might say. And how I had those props is just mind-blowing. Okay, so
well, don't say anymore. At least don't say any more on here, because the book is available, and it is called 3 Seconds in. How do you pronounce it? Bogota,
which is the capital of Colombia.
So if you haven't sold it on the back of that, I don't know what will. You've written that, so that is absolutely fascinating. I'm just keeping an eye on the time. You've got this other book which you'd sent to me, and I have to say, the thing with me is when somebody sends me a book, I tend to read either the first chapter or at least 2 or 3 pages, because I just want to know what the book's about and is it going to appeal to me. And it seemed right from the off, It's very charming, beautifully written, sensual work. And I thought, I'm going to enjoy this. I put it down. And I didn't pick it up because of everything else, which again is very embarrassing. But on the little bit that I read, I just thought, I know I'm going to enjoy it, and I know Julia's going to enjoy it. And that's why it's embarrassing to say that I haven't got to it, because we're in the tyranny that we're in, and we're trying to do the best we can. And those things, which are actually why I love books, have been put to the back.
Well, they're not at the back, because I've had the pleasure of seeing Richard's bookshelf, and there's something said within the world of books. The books that are read have gravity, and they should all come to the floor. So books on the floor or folded are being read. Books on the bookshelf are not being read. And I've seen your bookshelf, and there's a lot of books in stacks on the floors. So I can see you're struggling with a huge amount of books, but you're a reader and you're reading them. So I totally see it. And I know how overwhelmed you are. So
I have to say,
it's amazing how you get
if you can see behind me, hang on, where's the shot here? This you can't really see it, but there's a bookshelf just over here, which is ramshackle and put together on planks and what have you. All those books were stacked up around the chair that you sat, that I was sitting in when we were having a cup of tea before we started. And only when John Hamer was in, I thought, God, the place looks a mess. I need to get those books out the way. And I brought them up here and just quickly knocked up the, which people can't see, of course, because the camera's not pointing that way. But that's the only reason they're on a shelf. Now I'm pleased they're on a shelf, because before, and people will know that, by the way, if you look at the monologues, you'll see that the books were getting higher and higher as I was doing my monologues downstairs. Anyway, enough about me. It's about you. So tell us about this other book.
The way the book started, and I'll go through really quickly, is I drove out to the Sahara.
Wow.
And while I was driving out and crossing from Spain to Morocco, a whole bunch of realizations hit my head. And this is very similar to what I was saying to you about before, where you think that all your previous life experiences have helped. So with Not on the Beeb, when I set that up, I'm like, oh my goodness me, I've had this really kind of crazy life, but I'm an editor, I'm a writer, I've got all these different skills. I was going to be a doctor when I was at school, so I studied all the sciences and I applied to medical school, and it's like, and then I changed, and my father was so angry with me, but because what are you doing, you're going to be, one of my sons is going to be a doctor, and it's like, no Dad, I'm running off to film school. And then when I finished running film school,
all the things, so
but I learnt a few tricks, and when I finished film school, I had a whole career, I had a TV series lined up and everything, but I kind of ran away traveling to go and learn something else. I wanted to learn about money and selling things, but when I was doing Not on the Beeb, I realised that all these skills and all the things I'd learned had all come into play, and it's just like, all right, now I kind of get my training. This is kind of like a world training. And with Momo coming back to, and that's also very much what the story of 3 Seconds of Bogota is. It's how all these experiences in my life came to that one moment to mean that I had more years left, because it shouldn't have happened. With Momo...
Just show everybody the book.
So with Momo. So
just so they get to see the cover.
So this is the cover of the novel. And as I was crossing on the boat, I kind of realised that with my experiences, because I tried to hitchhike across the Sahara when I was in my 20s, and I'd ended up. Hang
on, you can't just sort of leave it there. I just tried to hitchhike across the Sahara, it's like, as you do.
Well, I ended up. I thought it was as cheap as India, and I kind of went with £5 a night, and then discovered the hotels were £12 a night. So I had to make friends very quickly, and these fishermen in a hut took me in and taught me how to...
What, fishermen in the Sahara?
On Senegal, down by the coast.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Which is where I was heading to, the Niger River, long story. But anyway, they taught me how to fish, and I lived with them and stuff. I'm forgetting where I'm going with that. Back to here. Yes. So I realised that with my experiences in my life, I was in a unique position to do something, and so I sat down and started writing the books. It's very similar. The genesis of this is very similar to the genesis of Not on the Beeb. I just realised I had to do something, and I was in quite a unique position to do it. So it's written as a novel. But I designed it also, this is part of the kind of truther thing, I designed it to be read, a parent to read with a child, and the intention was to try and trigger the child to ask the parent difficult questions.
Right.
Because I thought this would be a way of waking up adults, because kids can, when kids ask those questions, they're amazing, and then
Yes.
you think you've answered them, and they go, "Why?"
Yeah.
It just completely can stomach you. So I kind of designed a book to be like it, and then this is how I've ended up with. If I hold it up to the camera, so this has kind of got 4 books for kids where they step through. So what I'd kind of read about was how young boys don't pick up big books. So I figured if I broke the main novel down into 4 parts, and then the kids could step through, it's like I've read a book.
Yeah.
So it's a sense of achievement after
that's
basically
brilliant.
reading a quarter of the way through. So that, there's one way to buy it for children, but for adults, exactly the same story, word for word, is inside just a normal novel. But when the kids have kind of read all 4, you can actually pick up the novel and go, "You've just read a novel."
Yeah.
And that's a way of building. My idea behind this was to give the kids confidence. But within the story, I'm not going to say anything about the story except for Kerry Murray, did Portraits of Resistance, has just written a review, and he has called it an ambush. He's called the whole story an ambush. He feels he was ambushed. And I've thought about this for a while, and I kind of feel a bit guilty because it is an ambush, because I'm steering people into a certain way. And of course, I wrote it trying to get the kids to ask parents difficult questions. So I have a massive agenda going on with the story without giving away anymore.
Brilliant. So there we are. And these books, are they available from you directly, or all good bookshops, as they say?
Well, they're on all the terrible bookshops like Amazon,
All the terrible ones.
who do all the censorship and everything else, which we talked about before. But my website is called wildtales.co.uk.
Wild Tales.
Wild-tales, tales.co.uk. All the books are on there, and you can buy a set, so they come. This is what my partner beautifully does. She puts a little ribbon around them, but you can buy them as a set as well. So you can buy the adult and the kids ones together, or you can buy everything broken.
And if they buy from your website, more of the money comes to you?
Yes, much more.
Yeah.
Because Amazon take away a massive chunk. And just as an just to give everyone an idea of the scale of what we face as freedom fighters and what you face, Richard, because is also with you being demonetized, is these big corporations will do anything to keep us quiet. So if you put my name into Amazon, it diverts to someone else's name. So people can't find my books by putting in my name. But if you put my name into Google, it will actually bring up the Amazon link for the book. So Google is stepping around. If you go into Goodreads, it's run by Amazon, you put in my name and it comes straight up with my books. But when it's financially, if people find my books on Amazon, it could end up with me earning a couple of pounds.
They don't want that to
happen.
happen.
They don't want that to happen because they want to keep us quiet, which goes back to what I was saying about cash and things. Is people need to vote with their money. So people, if you're watching, Richard's fantastic work, you need to support Richard. You need to buy him a coffee, go on his Patreon or whatever way.
You heard that, didn't you?
You do. I'm sat the other end. I know it. It's really important. Richard's been demonetized, and everyone needs money to live. And if they can get us stressed, which is what they're doing by not having enough money so we can't pay bills, we spend our time fighting to put food in the fridge instead of doing what we do as communicators, getting the information and giving it to people. So we need that energy of the vote. We need your vote with £1 if you want us to keep to accelerate and keep going.
Yeah. No, I agree. And of course I feel for those people who want to be, what should you say, well, just living a life, but they too are having to do dead-end jobs or whatever it is. They're maybe looking after relatives who are ill. Perhaps they had something that was injected into them and they're looking after them, and they can't live the lives they want to, and they're having to do jobs, all sorts of weird hours in order to just put enough food on the table. And I mean, I know what it's like when I was looking after my dad who had dementia for 2 years, and I gave up pretty much everything to do that. And I know that there are millions now as a result of a certain thing that was put into people who are doing just the same, trying to keep their friends, and they're not able to because of this awful capitalist society, the extreme capitalist, which has kept us down. And we're having to earn, and you've just been on the news. Not that I listen to the news, but somebody sent me a clip saying I think it was Chris Brooks actually, his channel, that they're putting up the fuel prices again. So again, it's in the winter. We know that all these costs are coming on people, and part of my self-appointed remit is to try and find ways that can help people or just make them laugh, so there's a bit of relief.
Comedy's probably one of the most powerful things in terms of entering people's minds. When we were under the really heavy censorship, it was the comedy that kind of got through and helped people. And it's there as relief. It's there as a propaganda tool, as a way for people to understand. People understand things. When people can laugh, they'll take in information when they're not trying to protect their worldview.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Because John Cleese, wasn't it, who he ran something, what was it called? I can't remember. Something Arts. And he used to do business. He used to do all these business videos in the 80s, 70s and 80s. He used to do all these business videos about, health and safety and closing the deal and all this kind of stuff, but used comedy because that's how they got the message across.
Yeah.
And so so I ought to do more comedy, but I never know whether what I do is funny. So there's always that. Anyway, we're kind of coming up to the end of this. What have you got? Have you got anything coming up? Have you got another book project, a film, or anything else coming up that we need to think about?
Yeah, I've got something very important coming up, but can't mention it here for certain reasons on the film. Yeah. So, if you're interested in any of the work doing, just come onto the Not on the Beeb website, hit join. There's a newsletter that goes out often every week, sometimes 2 a week, and all the information about the next film project is in there, and you'll be able to support it or see what's going on.
Of course, I'll put the links in the description, so you can not only get the books, but you can get Not on the Beeb and all of that, and it will be fantastic. Listen, thank you so much, because you've made a huge, long journey all the way from John O'Groats down to jolly old Worthing.
It's amazing to be in this studio, this iconic studio that I've seen so many times, and to see reality. It's wonderful.
When I started this, some chap said, "Oh, it's easy for you guys sitting there with a blue screen and fake backgrounds," and I thought, "Hang on a minute,
no, this
I
is real.
Can get up and walk around here." But that's because I'm just old school, and having worked a bit in television in the past, I just love the fact that you're sitting in something which is real.
Yeah.
And we are being pushed ever more into a virtual world with the digital stuff. We spoke about money, but the other thing is we haven't really spoken about is this sort of everything is becoming digital, and we're seeing this. And I think it was predicted that people will wear these VR headsets and go walking in the country that way, rather than actually go in the country in real life.
Which is a terrible thing we need to avoid, because right down from, if we're going to eat milk, we just need the real milk. If we're going to walk in the country, we need to take our shoes off and earth.
Yeah.
Earthing is so important now with what's going on, because with some of the things that might be hurting us, earthing works. And it literally, you can see the platelets, the blood platelets under a microscope separating when you earth. They clump together if you build up too many electrostatic forces.
And we are surrounded by all of that.
We are, and it's increasing. So just getting your shoes off, walking barefoot just out in the garden, or holding onto railings with your hand, because of course that's like an earthing rod going down. Raw eggs on the market, paid in cash, you'll be all right.
There we are, ladies and gentlemen. Mark Playne, Not on the Beeb, writer, author, filmmaker, website runner, and truther, all of those. Mark, thank you so much for being my guest, and thank you for coming down here to the studio and brightening my day.
Thanks so much for having me, Richard. Thank you.
I will be back, of course, with more interviews and wonderful monologues, but big thank you to you all. So from Mark and I, thanks for watching. Goodbye.